Hello, everyone. It is Tuesday, February 7th, 2023, and we're here again with Guy Armstrong and Jeffory Schofield talking about body electronics. And we're going to start out today with a very important topic with body electronics, the practice and the protocols, and especially as we move into deeper and deeper teachings within body electronics, I find this topic to be even more essential. So today, Guy is going to start off by introducing the topic and leading us, and then we're going to just jump in when we feel to. So take it away, Guy.
Right, thank you. Hey everybody, how you doing? So the list is a sort of teaching that was given to Dr. Ray through prayer. Apparently, his life was in a bit of a disarray, and he sort of spent some time in prayer. Graham Bennett told me he sort of had his life in such a crazy mess, I guess you'd say, that John really needed to do this kind of thing. And he discusses this in chapter 11 of book 1 of the Logic and Sequence series. Graham Bennett actually wrote a book on the list, which I found to be really worth a read, because I was a bit of a wild child when I was younger, and when I first got into body electronics, and I could commit really well to the nutritional stuff and to the regular point holdings, but in other areas of my life, I sort of found myself indulging my reactive patterns, which is basically the opposite of what we want to do in BE, basically preventing a healing crisis in that way. And I sort of wish I've often wished that I got into the list as a younger man, a lot younger. And Dr. Ray always sort of hammered home the importance of the list, but I guess I was just a bit of a wayward sort of teen or a wayward young man in some ways, and it was always something on the back shelf. And anyway, around 2009, I read this book by Graham Bennett, which is called The List: The Art of Constructive Manifestation, and it's about this teaching the list. It's a great book because the teaching is so powerful, and he just breaks it down into sort of the myriad aspects and ways that this teaching can affect your life and how it can uplift you and help you. And it's very practical, and it's very slow and steady, like John always teaches or taught. Slow and steady wins the race, and this kind of thing. So the list is really a lot about that. I was the kind of person that really needed it spelled out to me, unfortunately, and so it really was slow and steady. But once I got into it, I saw how powerful it was and how good it could be at sort of preventing us from indulging in our nonsense or wallowing in our sort of greed and selfishness and reactive patterns and stuff like that. So the basic idea of the list is make a list of all the things that you feel are your responsibilities, your obligations, the commitments, the sort of deep desires that we have. We don't share this with anyone. There are perhaps occasions where a husband and wife or business partners or a group of people might have the same sort of agenda and the same list. And so you'd have collective lists, which is very powerful, obviously, as you can see in the sort of business world. And when people want to achieve things together, it's really beautiful and really powerful. But with regard to our own private list, we don't want to show this to anyone. We want to weigh each and every item on the list for its sort of constructive purpose. And this is partly why it's such a powerful tool, because if we put something on our list, we don't want to just put willy-nilly kind of stuff on there, just any old thing, this or that or whatever. We want to put stuff on there that's going to be beneficial for us and for the people around us. And this can be just sort of anything from the simplest thing, like got a pile of washing in the corner that I need to do, to really complicated, amazing things like want to become CEO of the company I'm working for or whatever. The other thing is that often nowadays in the world, we're sort of encouraged societally to multitask and do many things at once and be really busy and be really happening and amazing and cool and stuff like that. And there's a lot of pressure, I think, on goal setting and external validation and getting the big thumbs up from everyone else. And Graham makes the point in his book on the list that we don't want to just change the things outside of us. We want to change what's inside us. So he starts the book by discussing some of the mental sort of work that John was doing in the 1960s with a gentleman who's only ever known as Bob. But John and Bob sort of worked together, uncovering layers and layers of mental resistances in the mind. And Graham's very authoritative on this, about, as you know, pretty much anyone who's experienced in body electronics is, about the relationship between our thoughts and our feelings and desires and our attitudes and the world around us and the situations that we get ourselves into, that sort of thing. So the list is, in many ways, it's our most sincere form of prayer, because it's one really powerful form of prayer, I guess, because we're putting things down that are very, very important to us, but we're not neglecting the simple things that we might sort of deem unimportant. Importance is a subjective judgment. Like what's important to me is different to what's important to you, and what's important to some people is different to what's important to others. And so when we go to order our list and do the things on our list, we need to order them in a manner that reflects their simplicity. So we put the easiest things at the bottom, or maybe at the top, and work our way down, or we can put them at the bottom and work our way up. I think John usually says put the easiest things at the bottom and work your way up. It's kind of a nice way to visualize it. The reason we want to do the simple things, the easy things, is because we want to be able to see the end from the beginning of each act. And in that way, we're working with real confidence. John will use the word faith, which some people find to be a bit of a triggering word because it has religious connotations. But we want to be able to see finishing the act before we even start the act. So something simple like picking up a pile of washing on the floor and washing it and hanging it on the clothesline, that's probably pretty easy for many of us. So that kind of thing can sort of be at the bottom of the list. Yeah, have you guys got anything to say? Am I on the right?
There's a couple of things
here
that I can jump in on. One of the things that comes to mind, and I think it's not as important now as it was then, when I first started doing the lists like 20 some years ago, which was making amends. Making amends is part of the list. And I remember, so there's sort of categories, and making amends is one of those categories. And so you not only write it out, what and who you need to make amends with. Not necessarily that does it have to be with that particular person, but that person may even be deceased, but to acknowledge it and then take action to do something to make amends for that particular thing. And so it's like prayer in a way, but it's prayer with action, with our own action. We're not waiting for the guy on the cloud to make anything happen for us from this list. It's not that kind of manifestation. It's really the acknowledgement of our own consciousness on paper. So that's a couple of things that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Well said. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the points that Graham makes really well in his list, in his book, is sort of that every neglected act. I'm not sure exactly how he phrases it, but it's something like every neglected act represents a kind of suppressed emotionality. So I thought there was a really good sort of example of this, which I'll get to in a minute. But when you say making amends, Illia, a lot of us have got issues with our parents or maybe our children or our cousin, family, old friends or whatever, old exes, so on. And when we think of those people, sometimes we'll get a rush of emotionality, and we'll have some word patterns to go along with that. And so making amends is a really important part, I guess, of the list. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everyone who gets involved in the healing work and is sincere about it should ask themselves, how can I be spending all this money on health supplements and so on, but I have a bad relationship with my mum, my dad, my wife, my husband, my son or daughter, or that sort of thing. And if you have this, I don't know, whatever feelings toward a person, how can you really sort of heal yourself? So a big part of it is, I guess, addressing our own out of control emotionality, where we've decided that we're never going to talk to a person again, or we're never going to have anything to do with a certain person again. And and sometimes that might even be a good thing once in a while, to distance ourselves from someone, but
to release any old grudges or resentments or anything.
Yeah,
like that.
to release old grudges. Yeah, like we do on the point holding table.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I'll tell a little story about it, because a lot of this stuff we may not even be aware of, like many of the other things that happen within body electronics. It's coming from the unconscious, and we're making the unconscious conscious so that we can work with it. And when I first started doing the list, there was like this part of the list that was financial, and to recall any financial amends that we had to make. And so I really sat with that for and things would come, and as things would come, and I would write them down, and then I would act upon them. And this one memory came of this woman who had lent me some money. It had been like at least 20 years prior, and she had been a co-worker, and I think I needed money for rent or something. It was in a real desperate moment, and I was just talking about it or something. And at the end of the shift, she gave me this money, and it wasn't very much, but it was this beautiful gesture of lending me this money to do something that I needed, that was important to me. And that memory came back. I had completely forgotten about that. Like, it had literally was sublimated in my unconscious. So when I, happily, the woman was still alive. She was quite a lot older than I, and she was still alive, and she was still living in the same city as she had been before. So I found her, I looked her up, and I went to visit her, and I took her the money. And and then we rekindled a friendship after many, that had been so many years before, and we had, gone on to live our lives, and not, I wasn't in that job for many, many, many years. And so it was such a beautiful thing. And it was just such a beautiful rekindling of a friendship as well, just from remembering that and then acting upon it. So it was a really beautiful thing. And there's like this, one of the things that I discovered about allowing the unconscious to show you where we need to make amends is to release. I mean, of course, it comes with all the emotional and the transmutation has to take place. What I found was, in those places where hidden guilts and shames, once I had no idea that they were even there, but they were still energetically present. Of course, anything that's sublimated, anything that's suppressed, is still energetically present in our life, in our the energy that we manifest with. We're just not aware of that. So by allowing that to kind of percolate up, and then dealing with it as it comes, and working with it on the list, it's really a tremendous process.
Absolutely. Yeah. Graham called some of these things energy leaks. So I think a lot of the time he was sort of getting at simple things that are just left undone. Like he gives the example of not having shoelaces, or needing to fix your shoelaces or something like that, and someone go to work and can't stop thinking about your shoelaces, and
Right.
needing to fix them, and trying to do everything in the world except the easy thing of going to the shop and getting some new shoelaces.
Right. Procrastination can be quite a trap.
Yeah.
We put ourselves in quite a trap, quite a loop with procrastinating ideas. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. John writes in those logic and sequence books that without commitment and intent, one is relegated to experience the reactive content of the human mind. So if I look back on my life, I can see I sort of wallowed in my own patterns for, I don't know, quite a few years in some ways. And that was sort of involved in a lot of denial and a lot of indulgence, maybe a bit of recklessness here and there. And yeah, it's such a profoundly true kind of thing that if we don't have commitment and the intent to follow through, and sort of the regular application of something that's good for us and uplifting, then we're just going to end up, wasting our life on something foolish, or maybe yeah, maybe just going round and round in circles. Like someone said that a virtue is a vice if it's a compulsion. So, and John and these other experienced people in BE sort of make the point that even though many of our patterns, can appear really virtuous on the outside, and we might be really successful in some ways, we can still sort of have programming of success and that sort of thing. So I guess the list is also about freedom, in the sense it's not so much about indulging our playing with the world, playing with matter. We want to become free from the bonds of matter.
That's a really good point, because it's not about manifesting. It's not about manipulating external yin energies. That's really, I think that's really super important. It's about releasing anything that is keeping us from the natural flow, the internal natural flow, which is based in love, light, and perfection. So we're removing anything that's shrouding that. That's really, and then it just becomes that love, light, and perfection becomes this natural flow. So that what then we see in our yin environment is is more from that and less from resistance. And we see that in our lives. As we release resistance, we see that happen. I remember when Doug held the visualization and consciousness course in 2005, and I went through the zero ohms resistance and the time-space continuum work. And after that is when I really became acutely aware of the necessity to keep my my emotion and my thoughts, and continually continually be willing and lovingly and willingly looking deeper as as things came up, and organizing myself with the list and everything. And I had to be very, this is something that you'll discover too, as new people coming in, as you point hold and you go up the emotional scale by transmutation, you'll find that your word and the written word becomes more powerful. And in that way, what we speak and what we write, and the thought of the word as well, the inner word, the inner vibration of that, of language, becomes a much more powerful, and by powerful I mean its ability to be made manifest is much more available. So our responsibility at that point then just becomes greater and greater and greater and greater. And I was recognizing, particularly it was such a, that when you go through the time-space continuum warp, and then there's parts of your brain that rearranges itself electromagnetically, and things just start working in a very different way. And I recognized very early on that what I spoke and what I wrote came into being very quickly. And that was such, there was a period of time when I was processing a lot of fear around it, because it was such a, that responsibility weighed in, that fear came up around that intense responsibility. There was a period of time that I was almost fearful to write anything or fearful to speak anything, because of the action that was then made manifest. So that's something to be aware of in the, in that evolutionary process, is that that sense of, that responsibility gets greater and greater. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
I remember sitting across the table from you when you went through the time-space continuum to zero, and not having any clue what was happening. Just watching the dial, and stayed at zero.
Yeah, that was the first. That was the first.
For whatever reason, I was the one that got to experience it with it.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it in other videos. It's
yes,
interesting. Interestingly, though, even though there's a lot of new people coming in, with the new body electronics group page that I made, which I should, in retrospect, could have been done a long time ago, because I had all those years that I had. I think I started the group page in 2015 with the Salt Spring Island intensive. Excuse me, one moment. And it's been, been going pretty much ever since. There was a little lull there where there wasn't much activity for a while, but for the last couple of years, there's been lots of activity on that page, but it was unshareable. And there was a lot of locks on the group. And so anyway, I stopped putting content on there, and I started a new body electronics group. So the new body electronics group is just it just says body electronics. It's not the one with the evolution of consciousness as the subtitle. So when I was just doing that just a week or two ago, I chose my slide that I have around the time-space continuum warp, 0 ohms resistance in the time-space continuum warp. I chose that as the not the profile picture, but the picture, the group photo, like, that's what you see. And I just found that interesting because I wasn't sharing like a lot of that advanced work at all. For many years, I wasn't sharing any of it, because until we get to a certain point through the emotional body and into the mental body, there's really not a lot of point to sharing that advanced work. I mean, it's, people can read about it in the Logic and Sequence in book 3, the electrification of matter, but until we actually do the work, which takes a lot of time and effort. I didn't want people sort of jumping over to these grandiose ideas and sort of, skipping over things that can't be skipped over. We can't go through the time, we can't really go through the time-space continuum warp or to 0 ohms resistance until we master certain parts of the mental body. So, but interestingly enough, that information wants to come out now. So it's, maybe there's people that are really going to be expedient in their emotional process over the next year or so. I would love to see that happen. I mean, there hasn't been a VNC since 2005. So we're coming up on almost 20 years since there's even that work is even being taught. So perhaps consciousness now is getting to the place. And here's another, just pop a couple of things here about that, because I was thinking about it the other day, possibility of a VNC, which has to come after an instructor's course. And it's not just instructors that get invited to the VNC, it's instructors that have had at least 2 cranials. So they not only had a cranial during the instructor's course, but then they went back and went for a second cranial, perhaps not at an instructor's course, but there would have to be, it could be at a point holding course. That's how Doug did it. He offered a cranial section for people who came back after the instructor's course to do a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever. I've given and received 7 cranials. So it had, so that was a prerequisite to be invited to the VNC. And that's so interesting because, we can do 1 cranial, we can get through 1 cranial. All 3 of us have had cranials here. So we can get through that 1 cranial, but to then be willing to go back for a second, that's a major leap. And if we're willing to do that, we're really willing to go forward with this work. So yeah, a lot of people do not ever come back for their 2nd cranial. Most people. It's actually more intense to give than it is to receive, in my experience.
Sorry, what did you say there, Illia? Just sort of 10 seconds ago, I missed it.
Most people don't come back for their 2nd cranial. They'll go through the first one, but most people don't come back for their 2nd cranial. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I said in my experience, it's much more difficult to give a cranial than it is to receive one. Like the pain and suffering is much more intense giving the cranial, because you have to stay so focused. I mean, the person on the receiving the cranial is of course being focused as well. They're moving through as quickly as possible anything that's coming up. You have to get really internally adept at transmuting without emoting. So there's no emoting of emotion. There's no emoting of word patterns. You're accessing everything within, but there's no emoting and no movement. I mean, we wouldn't dare to move a millimeter while having a cranial, especially in the triple axis going up in behind the eyeball. So it's, you know, at that point, we're becoming very focused and very mentally focused and very adept at the internal process. So that we're moving through it and we're transmuting, you know, as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I found that was really amazing during mine was I could transmute, you know, we do the left side of the body first, generally in point holding. And my left side was really good. It was just like a textbook point holding, you know, I didn't wriggle a muscle, transmute it really well, word patterns, did it really, really just straight to the point. And then when it came to the right side, the cranial of the triple axis point, I screamed like a baby for about half an hour, and I resisted and resisted, and I fought it, and then eventually worked through it. I worked through that layer of it, you know.
Do you feel there was,
that was
it was you, so you got to the emotion, you got to the, you were working through the memory and word patterns and just moving through it. The added thing that we have with the facial muscles and the cranial sutures is there's a lot of like these muscles in here. I mean, we had to memorize them. I was looking at it the other day. I would have to completely, you know, even to instruct again, I would have to instruct myself again to go back and you know, recall all of those you know, the cranial sutures and the cranial and the facial muscles. Like it, you know, I can remember some of them, but Doug used to have us in a you know, in a big circle, and we would just be going through the muscles, and like you had to memorize every one because you didn't know when he was going to say, okay, this, okay, next one, and we'd be going around on the cranium, you know, in our written material. And, you know, we really had to be on the ball. We really had to know what we were doing. But one of the things that I felt, especially in the first cranial, was a lot of the suppressed dental work, like was coming out. Like I was remembering a lot of, I was having so much burning and so much pain and suffering coming from old dental work, even extractions, and you know, all of that. I mean, we have, you know, we use Novocaine for a reason, to suppress all of that pain, but that pain is still suppressed. It's suppressed in those muscles, it's suppressed in those tissues. So that to me was a lot of the painful process, and it was an emotional process too. I had as a young girl, I don't recall exactly how old I was, but I was very young, like let's say maybe 8 or 9 years of age. My mother took me to a dentist and I wouldn't open my mouth, and he lifted me up out of the chair. It was just him and me. My mother was in the waiting room, and he took me up out of the chair and he shook me so hard that I remember my head was like that, and he just shook and shook and shook and shook, and he threw me back in the chair, ordered me to open my mouth again. But of course, with my temperament, I really clamped. There was no way that he was ever going to get my mouth open. So yeah, I think if I recall, I think he lifted me and shook me 2 or 3 times and then gave up, and he was so enraged that he went and got my mother and told me to come out and take me out and never to bring me back.
Wow. I bet he still charged your mum, did he?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure there was yeah, something involved, but but all of that came up, you know, with those opening up those muscles. Yeah. Of course, we do the TMJs first, so not all of that has to come out just in the, you know, we do pre-cranial point holdings and so forth. But yeah, did that bring up a something for you, Jeff? Or are you frozen?
Oh, no, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but
yeah.
You're hiding. You're frozen. You're frozen in the hiding position. Oh, there you are.
There we go. Hey, buddy.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, I I've got a lot to say about uh, teeth. So
Yeah.
much so that it's like you were saying earlier, you're very careful about what you do say because um, my belly button started to pulse when I breathed water up my nose doing rebirthing, and it's been pulsing for 28 years now, and I can't turn it off. But I remember feeling when it first started to pulse, it was just like the pulsing I would feel underneath my fingers when I would hold points. And I recognize it as the same universal pulse, we'll call it. And so I've done a lot of research into prenatal memory and looked at the development of the teeth from an embryological point of view. And we all had this experience of building our body inside this watery womb, not new, but suppressed knowledge. And if anybody here is a researcher, I would love to gather information about a man named John Baird in the 1890s, Baird. And he studied fish and embryogenesis in fish as well as other mammals. But he says the embryological laws have been suppressed as far as how embryology begins. It's not even in the medical schools today. It's not being taught. And this is a very deep layer of resistance to the development of not just our teeth, but the body. Because in the womb, the teeth buds are in place for the milk teeth and the adult teeth, but they're obviously not breaking through the gums yet. But all of that pre-assembly, if you will call it that, happens while we're inside the womb. And the interesting point about what it means for my belly button to be pulsing in relationship to embryogenesis is Samuel Baird saw was a fish. All fish is what he said. I'd love people to, disprove this, go and do the research, because this knowledge was known back in the 1800s, but it got suppressed and embryology has been taught differently. But anyway, so you have the egg and the sperm get together, and there's 2, 4, 8 cells, and those original 8, the infinity symbol, that is tumbling down the fallopian tube or wherever it is, getting ready to penetrate into the wall of the uterus and start to build. But one of those 8 cells is chosen to drop down one stalk, which becomes the umbilical cord. So it's in the middle. It's dropped down, and all other 8, they're called trophoblasts. They're like an invasive parasite in their nature, and they penetrate and dig their way in and create the blood supply to where we all became dependent upon this flow back and forth with our mom. But this one simple stalk that drops down, that's, I don't know, what the creator has shown me is that all the other animals, birds, and fishes hold the keys to the end of time. We're talking about the time-space continuum, but there's also the promise of they shall be changed in the twinkling of an eye. Because there's so much competition in the medical arena and the control over death and dying currently taking place, that's the only way it could happen. And so the creator had to see the end from the beginning, just like we're talking about the list. Even if it's a very simple act of doing the laundry in the corner, like you said, Guy, or some, more grandiose concept of the end of time. There's nothing new under the sun. This had to have been seen and planned for this to occur. So I'm really, thankful for these conversations we're having. And I think just that simple little understanding of the pulsing of the navel was, if you've ever been at a birth, you put your hand on the cord after birth and it pulses for a while so the blood stops flowing between the mom and the baby. So my belly, when I elicited the nasal pain, you talk about having a cranial and doing all that pain stuff. Well, I was doing rebirthing and I asked the question, well, what's the story behind nasal pain? We all resist, we wear nose plugs so we don't get water up our nose. So I curled up in the ball and I elicited that pain, and it animated my belly button to start pulsing. And this is after I've experienced all this other body electronic stuff. And when that happened, it's like, it was like an entire different parallel universe opened. But anyway, next week I'll talk more about that. But that kind of ties in with everything we've talked about. And I want to, like, next week, I'd like to talk about the connection between unconsciousness and parasites.
Excellent.
And it'll be, I'm in the middle of doing some deworming like a horse right now. So it's very curious to consider that, we talk about viruses and bacteria and all that, but top of the food chain is parasites.
Yes.
And it's a reflection of parasitic activity we all did when we dug into our mom's tummy and we put our roots down and we became established and we built our home and our temple. And so we're just repeating on the world stage everything we forgot inside this small thing. So the end of time is nothing more or less than remembering the whole, the end from the beginning. So the stock thing and this knowledge about embryology, I would like to see that become more, people have an awareness of that. Because I've tried to understand what the heck this pulsing belly button means for 20. So I call myself Dr. Bellyman Buttons online. You can find me, and I've written, help me get some bank going. That would be great. But it seems like whenever I share, I think I can count on two hands the number of people that have bought that book off of Amazon. There's such an incredible level of resistance to these early embryological memories that, for whatever reason, I'm the one that's been pulsing away here for 28 years.
Your internet's breaking up a little bit, but I think we got most of it. I could hear most of it, but there was quite a bit of breakup there. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to say, so we got guys in the early morning hours over in New Zealand, so he's going to go off to work soon. So we got a few more minutes. Did you want to say anything more about the list, Guy?
Well, one thing that I was sort of reminded of while Jeffory was talking, it's been sometimes I've had questions that I don't really have an answer to, and I've found that just progressing in body electronics has really helped answer those kind of questions. You have one of these questions that's going on for years and years in your mind, like, why does this happen, or why is life like this, or that sort of thing. So thank you for reminding me of that, Jeffory. Yeah, I hope you find some answers to your 28 years pulsing soon, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the point about diligence. We've got to just be.
You're breaking up again, Jeff.
I've experienced.
Sorry.
Yeah. Can't understand you, Jeff. You're breaking up too much. Yeah, you're frozen and your audio is breaking up. Okay, so there's.
I just sorry. You guys go ahead then. Where?
Okay, there's one more thing that I would like to, because we're really looking at assisting people
I
in
don't
preparing.
like to, to give people that feeling, you know. Say this.
Okay, so we're looking at really helping people prepare, assisting people in the preparation process for the upcoming intensive. And one of the things that Guy and I did a video on Saturday that I posted, and we'll just keep adding to that as we do these weekly shares. We'll just keep adding to that. And one of the things that I wanted to make really clear right in the beginning to all the people who are thinking about it or contemplating coming in June to Nelson for the intensive, I've made a decision around, and I made this decision quite some time ago, several months ago, even maybe a year ago. I made a decision around the mRNA experimental injections that has been given to the people around the world, and in relation to body electronics. So I really looked within, I really contemplated it for a number of months, and what came to me was and I did post that at the time, and I have written about it. It's on my website. So it was, I did talk about it early on, but I want to make it really clear for people now so that there's no confusion or misunderstanding, that there's the parameters that I've made around that is, for now, anyone that has had those injections has to go through a minimum of a 6-month protocol with me prior to any intensive, and an intense detoxification process in order to attend any of the body electronics intensives. That 6 months has gone past now, so there won't be time now for this June intensive. If you are really feeling the internal calling for body electronics, I'm happy to assist you in any way for, and you've taken those injections, one or more of those injections, and you're really wanting to detoxify. We don't know if they can be thoroughly detoxified, but the program that I've put together is a 6-month program, and if followed correctly, it, in my opinion, will be a very, very, very intense amount of healing crises and detoxification that would be necessary, so that to ensure that there won't be any shedding during a very intimate, it's very an intimate, hands-on process that we do with body electronics point holding. So I just want to be really clear about that. So if anytime that somebody even wants to detoxify, it doesn't even have to be for the intent to participate in an intensive. If people are seeing that that what they have done is needing detoxification, then reach out to me by email, bodyelectronics1@gmail.com, and we can work together. So that's something that I wanted to address today. I didn't want anybody to, and I'll put it in writing too on the group page, so that people have a couple of ways to be able to access that information, because it's really important. I don't want anybody to show up, with fully jabbed or recently boosted, because I won't allow them to participate in the program. So, okay, that's all I have to say for today, or at least for this moment. So, what would you like to end our?
Well, I'll just put a few links in the comment section on this video when you pop it on the Facebook, Illia, just to some of the stuff that people have written
Great.
on the list. And
Love
yeah.
that. Yeah. And maybe some pages. I know it's Logic and Sequence, Book 1, Chapter 11. Is that correct? So maybe you
Yes.
can put, remind people of that, where they can go and look that up and read about it.
And also video number 30 of the 1996 instructors seminar in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Video
you for
number
that.
30. And it's
I
about
know.
40 minutes in, and there's about, I don't know, half an hour or an hour.
Great. I know you've
The agenda.
provided the very important papers that somebody did, and was it you that provided them with the videos and the content? Do you have that?
Oh,
Do you have
yeah,
that?
I have that. I can email
Yeah.
that to you. Yeah, if you
Would you
like.
please? I left that with my body electronics things in Ontario. So
Okay.
I don't have copies of that here, and I would love to have copies of that again.
Okay. Yep, no problem.
Great. Thanks
Yep.
so much. Oh, and another thing that came to mind from, would you be able to bring some of the booklets on the list that you spoke about from Graham
I'll do
Bennett
my best. Yeah.
for
Yeah, I
the
think so, yeah.
for the participants, to make available to the participants in June? That would be a really great thing for people to, just maybe if you needed some, like if Graham Bennett would like some money up front, I'd be happy to front that money, or, we can work that out and then bring even a half a dozen copies, or people can even say earlier on the group page if they're interested in getting a copy, and go to you directly, and then you'll know how many copies to bring. That would be awesome. If you have
That'd
room
be cool. Yep.
have room in your bag,
Yeah. Yeah.
that would be a great service. Okay.
Awesome.
Jeffory, do you have some closing remarks? Oh, I think
Well, if you can hear me,
you're pretty choppy. Your video is frozen and your audio is pretty choppy.
um,
Yeah.
I just want to put out my gratitude.
Likewise.
Well, I'm very grateful and thankful.
Mhm.
At this time, because the internet connection doesn't seem to be serving us very well.
It's a little choppy.
If you can just know that I'm thankful for all the consciousness change efforts being made.
Mhm. Likewise.
Then that's all. That's a great. That's the way.
Yeah. Well, thank you both very much, and we'll continue next Tuesday.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Have a great week, fellas.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Right.
All
You
right.
too.
Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.